Okay, thanks for tuning in. My name is Rory Burke. I'm an account executive here with Kapish Enterprise Architecture, and I'm going to give a quick run through LeanIX and what we do specifically with LeanIX here at Kapish. I've been here about 2 years, and I've demonstrated this to all sorts of different leading organizations around Australia and New Zealand, and it will be my pleasure to walk you through this one today. So just really quickly, I'm going to fly through a few slides, just explain about LeanIX and who Kapish are. At a very high level, Kapish has been working with LeanIX in the ANZ region for 5 or 6 years, going back to maybe 2018. We have over 80 customers, some of the leading, most recognizable brands in the area. And originally, we worked as a kind of reseller and support team for LeanIX. Over time, we've expanded that to really build out the amount of enterprise architecture, strategic services that we're offering, as well as expanding our network into other tools such as Signavio, also in the SAP family, and tools like Aptio as well. These other ones, Atlas and ServiceNow, also all out-of-the-box integrations with LeanIX, and we support those integrations very closely. A quick glance at the sort of customers we're working with, huge number of big names that you recognize from all around the region and all sorts of different industries. And really quickly, just to talk about what LeanIX is, the first thing I'll draw your attention to here is just these two most recent Gartner and G2 grids. You can see in both of these, LeanIX is and has been for many years the industry leader. You can see in the G2 grid, it has it well out in front, and I think that the reasons for that will become quite clear as we go through. It's a cloud-based software hosted out of data centers here in Australia for this region, and has all of your security best of breed certifications that you'd expect: SOC 2, ISO, Cyber Essentials Plus, and so on. Really quickly, in terms of how it's broken down, the core module is application portfolio management. That's where you get most of your core enterprise architecture, application management functionality. And then we have two add-on modules, technology risk and compliance, which focuses on adding lifecycle information and enables the ServiceNow integration. So really drilling down more on life cycles of IT components. And then we have architecture roadmap and planning, which really goes into the future state planning and project mapping and A/B testing and things like that. So we'll get to that in a moment. This is a really important slide that I want to show, and it's kind of the last thing I'll show before we jump into the actual demo. But this is what LeanIX calls their EA meta model. This has gone through a number of iterations over the years, and it's been fine-tuned every time. And what these are basically is individual, what we call fact sheet types. So different types of data that we're interested in LeanIX. And at a glance here, you can see the sort of things that we're interested in. So at the core of everything in LeanIX is really applications and the relationship with the business. So application fact sheets, as you can see, examples like Salesforce, Workday, SAP, business capabilities, your customer relationship management, your finance, your shipping, whatever, different types of business capabilities. We have different sort of layers of granularity here, going from the most strategic and most business orientated at these objective and initiatives, going all the way down to technical IT building blocks. So your IT components, which are things like servers, like software subscriptions, like middleware, whatever else. You can see some examples here, and funneling up in terms of more from really granular and IT focused all the way up to very strategic and business focused across this meta model. So you can see this is not something that you need to pay too much attention to, but this is sort of what's happening behind the scene with the meta model. It's a really valuable source of IP from LeanIX that as soon as you boot up LeanIX, all of these relationships are in place. So there's no kind of strategizing about how you will build out a meta model, how you will kind of make things make sense. The structure is in place, and you'll see as we go through the demo how easy this makes it to pull interesting reporting. Also worth noting, the meta model is extensible if there's other things that you feel your business needs that aren't represented here, or if you kind of feel that some of these relations need to be different between them. It is possible. Again, not recommended. A lot of thought has gone through this, but it's definitely possible, and again, something that Kapish as a support team can help with. So with that, I'm going to jump right over into LeanIX, SAP LeanIX. So first thing I'm going to focus on here, and I'll make this a little bit bigger, is the inventory. So on the left, we can see all our different types of meta model fact sheets that you'll recognize from that other screenshot I showed. And what we can see here is basically a full complete list of all the individual fact sheets that we have across all these different types, applications, interfaces, providers, whatever else. This is the full list of everything we're tracking. You can filter this down to loads of detail, as you can with pretty much everything in LeanIX, as you'll see as we go through. And you can look at this in different ways. So a good way to think about this, particularly when you think about how we're getting data in there, is all of the data can really be shown as sort of a Excel spreadsheet type of format. So we can see if you have, like many people do, maybe you're coming from all of your application information being held on spreadsheets. If you have that in a spreadsheet with various pieces of information in different columns, what we can do is we can map those to corresponding columns in LeanIX, and you can get a lot of data in right at the beginning through just a kind of simple Excel import. Similarly, if you ever want to export from LeanIX for whatever reason, it's quite straightforward to pull out all the information in a sort of Excel format. So that's just a good illustration of how underlying this you can play around with kind of maybe more like what you already have on an Excel. But if we go back to the prettier view here, I'm just going to open up one of these, so an application fact sheet. Let's pop in. Basically, what a fact sheet is kind of the store of all the information about that data object. In this case, it's an application we're calling AC management. See a description here. This is, it's a demo application. It's quite vague. Supports all major functions for planning, organizing, and managing assessment center. Very good. So basically, what we're tracking is all of the relationships between this application and everything else in the meta model, as well as specific information about the performance and the usage of this application. So if we scroll down really quickly, first we can see a life cycle. This is talking about how long are we as a business planning on using this for a solution, and we can have phase in, active phase out, end of life dates, as you can see, and we're still in our active phase here. Then I'll come back to this. We can do things like track successors that we have planned to replace this, predecessors, various dependencies, parents, children. We have kind of enterprise architecture type of assessment options here. So we can add in time classifications and provide descriptions. If you're familiar with those, that'll make sense to you. Similarly, 6R classifications, 6R strategies, the complexity. And then there's other things where, if you're mapping out an initiative, which we'll get to shortly, you might have changes that are affecting a specific application. When you build out that initiative and reference this application, because everything is connected, that'll trickle down into this application fact sheet as well. Other things, business criticality, functional fit, various sort of things you can use to sort of collect data from users of the application and then record centrally here. And you'll see where that becomes important in the reporting. And then so on and so forth. What business capabilities are using it, you can have information about, say what organization is using it and how appropriate the functional fit for that organization is. So more ways to collect data on the relationship between different fact sheets, AI risk, employee data, so on and so forth, and the IT components that are building it there at the end, that are supporting at the end. So all of that information is visible in a really quick and kind of interesting ad hoc kind of way, or not ad hoc, but it's good for ad hoc analysis, where we can see at a glance all of the relations between AC management and everything else. So we can see it's part of or associated with 3 initiatives. It's used by 2 business capabilities, 1 organization, handles employee data, interfaces with HR admin, and is supported by these IT components. Interestingly, about the Relations Explorer, which you'll see on any fact sheet, is that you can kind of continue to just click through, and that's why I'd say it's good for ad hoc analysis. If you could say, oh, that's being used by Dell, what else is using Dell? Dell PowerEdge or whatever it is. Oh, OLAP Cube, what organizations are using that? You can just click, 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 and kind of continue to just leverage the interconnectivity of the entire system. So this is probably a good time to talk about how LeanIX is different from another enterprise architecture tool. So to my mind, the biggest innovation that LeanIX has versus kind of more legacy tools is its ability to allow for collaboration, allow for enterprise architecture data to be sourced from and contributed and provided to the wider business. So not just sitting in this sort of small, maybe siloed enterprise architecture function and everything landing on the enterprise architects to build and maintain and then distribute this information, but having the ability for everybody to have access to it, to contribute to it, to get the people who know the most about the specific, say, application or whatever it is, to have them be the ones who are sort of the custodians of the data. So the first way that that kind of materializes with LeanIX is through the licensing model. So rather than doing a seat-based or license-based commercial model, what LeanIX does is they base the pricing on how many applications you're tracking. So it's sort of a proxy of the size of your business, essentially. Because what they don't want to do is limit the amount of people who are having access or having to make you make a choice of, do I need to pay to get this person? You know, do I need to do kind of cost benefit analysis for every person I want to have access to this? And that's what we don't want. So it has unlimited user licenses. Everybody in your organization can have access, and we can set that up through a single sign-on, enter ID, make it very straightforward to get people access. Of course, you can set various rules around the level of access, whether it's read-only or whether they can write or whether they can suggest changes. And there's a lot of flexibility around how you do that. But what we can do then is we can assign a responsible person to every fact sheet. So ideally, say we would have, if this is some sort of, let's say, a HR application, we might have a business owner for this application, somebody in HR who knows the most about this application, and we can assign them as responsible. You can have multiple people as responsible. You can have observers, people who just want to know if there's changes. And what we can do then is on a regular basis, we can have this quality seal up above. We can have that break, say, once a quarter. And what that'll do is notify the responsible person to go in and double check the data and ensure it's up to scratch. What we can also do is we can build out surveys. So I'll quickly fly through a survey. Hopefully we have something good here. So what we can do basically is, let's just skip all this and we'll go straight to preview. Okay, no, we'll stay here. What we can do is basically to build out, drag and drop different boxes for different types of questions relating to this application. These can be sort of general templates that we can then apply to all applications or various types of fact sheets. But what we can do is send these out in an automated fashion to the responsible owners. And these can be done in sort of, not even within LeanIX. You don't even need to log into LeanIX. They're sent over email, and they can quickly input this data, submit, and that'll update the data, and we'll move on. So a lot of things that you can do there with the surveys. Different customers are using those to different extents, and some have very sophisticated processes for really ensuring that a lot of people are getting involved and keeping the data up to date. So from there, let's jump into a report. So first report I'm going to show is a roadmap report. You can see we have all sorts of different kind of types of report. I think the most important thing to remember right away is that with all of these reports, there's huge flexibility in terms of taking that report format and using it to display very different types of information. So first I'll go for an IT component roadmap. This is kind of a standard roadmap report. Let's kind of organize it a bit. So this is demo data. A lot of this stuff is sort of out of date. If you imagine this is our lifecycle data up here. But we can see things like, okay, we're getting some interesting information. This is the life cycle of that specific IT component. So we see that this Dell PowerEdge is at end of life, and that's passed, and we don't seem to have a phase out period. What we can do really quickly is if we have this report just saved, we can keep an eye on this all the time. So what we can do is, what I've done here is I can drill down to applications. And what we then have is this ability to expand on this, and it'll show us the applications that are using this tool. So we can see, say, maybe this Oracle middleware, we have it in phase out phase, AC management and bonus card use watch. We are not quite at the phase out phase of that yet. Now, seems like we have a plan in place. Bonus card use watch doesn't look like we have any phase out plans in place. So you can really dig in deeper. And in the same way that I'm showing applications here, we could overlay initiatives or something like that. We can go deeper and deeper as we like. We can also say, okay, I'm only interested in hardware for this report. I'm actually only interested in servers, specifically servers. And we can then get a real snappy report and showcase this in whatever way we like. We can expand all of these at a click, We can change what we're drilling down to from applications to something else. You can change that we cluster them rather than drilling down, and all sorts of other ways that we can vary this and create the specific report that you want to see. So also worth saying with all of these is that you can save any report at any stage and have that saved to either a kind of library of reports or more usefully a dashboard where we can have collections of reports for a specific purpose. So the interesting place to go from here is if I open up this fact sheet for this particular piece of hardware. So it's an IT component, so the lowest level building block that we have from a tech perspective. And what we see here is we have lifecycle data. Now, with one of those additional modules I mentioned at the beginning, the technology risk and compliance module, what we can actually do is pull in up-to-date, accurate IT component lifecycle information. So how do we do that? Up here in the corner, this reference catalog. If I open this up, what this pulls up is a centrally maintained catalog maintained by the LeanIX team that scours the web to find all of the lifecycle information for every possible IT component. I say every possible IT component because this library is huge, and also because if there's something that you need lifecycle information for that has, reasonably should have some sort of publicly available lifecycle information, then you can report missing data, and there's an SLA of 5 days for the LeanIX team to get that into the system. So we can see here for the Power Edge thing, it's done a quick search, it's found the necessary thing. We're getting a name, description, we're getting the links to the website, and we're getting the accurate lifecycle information. And then we're getting something done kind of to keep things clean for us within LeanIX. So we're having a provider fact sheet linked. So one of those other fact sheets, we're now automatically knowing that this is going to sit within Dell as a provider. Similarly, it's assigned a TBM category. So if we want to pull reports on our different categories of tech, we can do so easily without having to do that manually. That's all centrally maintained. And then we can quickly link and get that information. On a kind of wider scale, if I actually go back to the inventory, I pull up here, I can do IT component linking in a larger way. So this pulls up all of the unlinked IT components we have, which is a bunch. And it gives us a confidence score of how confident it is that this thing that it's searched in the reference catalog is what we're talking about here. So some of these are absolutely sure that it is what it is. Some of them are quite sure, and it'll give you the option to decide if you want to link those or not link those. And you can do these in bulk or do them one by one or whatever. So that's a really, really cool aspect, and those links will continue to get updated behind the scenes and without you having to chase down that information. So that's a huge value add for a lot of customers. Continuing to the reporting, I'm going to skip a lot of these reports, but I think the one that illustrates kind of the functionality of LeanIX best is the application landscape report. So this is my favorite report because it's just so flexible. So what we have here is essentially a business capability map. These Bs are level 1 business capabilities, and then within that we have level 2 business capabilities. We can trickle this down to just level 1s, make it a little bit cleaner, or go level 2 or level 3 if you have those. In terms of the business capability maps themselves, there's also reference catalogs within LeanIX to find industry-specific business capability maps that you can use as a starting point for your own organization. I know a lot of organizations are in the process of refining their business capability map, or when they bring on a tool like LeanIX, they use it as a good opportunity to refine that business capability map. So there's a lot of SAP standard reference libraries for various different industries, which are very useful, and you can pull those directly in to this system. So what we have is our business capability map, and within each of these, we're seeing what applications are sitting within there. Overlaid on that in these colors is what lifecycle phase that application is in. So some of these we're getting rid of, some of these are active, some are in phase out. So that's kind of level 1 of what we can do. Level 2 is we could say, let's overlay some data. So on the left, we can overlay, this is all information from the application fact sheet. So we can say, pull some of that data from the fact sheet that we've collected through surveys or through our initial import, and let's overlay that on this report. So let's go technical fit on one side, and let's put functional fit on the other side. So we get these little stars, 1 to 4 ratings of how technically fit, how functionally fit these are. With our filters, we can do things like, we can pull on another fact sheet. So we can say which applications are linked to the USA organizational group. and we can narrow it down like that, and we can save this as a USA specific report. Similarly, we could say, okay, what we only care about business critical applications for this report. You can do a huge amount of filtering there, both on the application side and on the business capability side. Up here, we have this lifecycle view, and that's dictating what we are viewing here. So talking about, mission business criticality, we can overlay that. So we've recorded in our fact sheets the criticality of each of these things, and we can just see how many mission critical things we have in here. All sorts of different ways you can look at this, what our 6R category is, what our time classification. You can really get creative with the sort of reporting you put together. But one of the most interesting ones that I love to show is if we do something like obsolescence aggregated risk. So now we're looking at life cycle again, but rather than looking at the life cycle of the application, we're looking at the aggregated obsolescence risk of the underlying IT components supporting that application. So for an example, we can click on Attorney Net here. It'll give a summary of the fact sheet, and we can see that it's using this IT component, and then it's giving us this little summary aggregated risk. The risk is considered addressed for Oracle database. Similarly, if we look at AC management, we can see, okay, on the risk side of things, we have this IT application hosting has an unaddressed end of life, and that's why we're showing up red on this report. So right away, we're getting multiple layers of information that we could overlay on this sort of report, which is really, really cool. When we get into future state planning, and when we talk about the architecture roadmap and planning module, what we can do is we can bring this time slider into play. So as we can see here, we're sat there nearly midway through 2025. I can add an initiative. So say we've planned out these initiatives. We'll go for this one, ERP rationalization, which is a overarching program containing a number of sub epics, these three sort of waves of the project. But let's overlay that. And then we see this thing up here at the top lights up with information. So we can click any point along that, and we can see how things sort of change, a few of the colors sort of shifting. But we can also right click and select the entire duration. So now we can see something else has happened. If I click settings, I can go show only changed fact sheets. And this is just showing me the things that have changed over the course of that initiative. So now what we can see is we have some end of life has been addressed. Some things have not been addressed and have gone from being in a risk addressed state to being unaddressed because time has changed, and we haven't accounted for that in our project. We can also see various things like some of these SAP systems were removed. This new ERP was added, and we can see DocMan went from inappropriate technical fit and inefficient functional fit to up to this higher level. So we can see basically clear visual outcomes of a planned scope of work. So this is really, really interesting. And again, you can continue to filter this down to get exactly the view that you want. Finally, on this, when we talk about having reporting that meets people where they're at and being able to speak to various different stakeholder groups within the organization, people at different levels who care about different levels of detail, we can also change the sort of granularity here. So we can do a rolled up view. This one shows the changes to those things over the course of the period. If I just click one point again, we'll see everything that sits within those specific categories just on a simple color. If we go stacked, we can see it just a little bit more detail. So basically, you can build out these reports. Say if you have somebody at an executive level who just has a number of reports they want to keep an eye on, you could have them very simply put together. Maybe they only care about what's going on in the USA. Maybe they only care about specific business capabilities and whatever else. We can just pick certain ones of these and really whittle it down and save it and put it to a dashboard. So that's really, really interesting. Going a little bit further onto the initiatives, I'm just going to quickly show how these work. So we'll pop into another fact sheet. We'll go to this ERP rationalization one we talked about, and let's just click into one of these components. So what you get really with the architecture roadmap and planning module is this transformations tab and the ability to plan out changes that are going to take place over time. So we have kind of sample transformations, introducing new technologies, new interfaces, discontinuing applications, so on and so forth. But what we can do is assign specific milestone dates specific things we're hoping to achieve on specific dates, and then have actions taking place at those times. So essentially, we're seeing the replacement of an IT component and the changing of, the technical function, the technical fit of that IT component. So we can document a whole bunch of changes we want to do, and then when we actually get there, when we, because we've put in the work to document the changes we're going to make, rather than once we get there and we in practice actually implement that change, rather than having to build that out again in LeanIX, we can simply just click execute, and that will execute the change within that initiative. So that's really, really cool as well. I'm coming towards the end of what I want to show you in this kind of quick demo, but there's one other really cool report that I want to highlight. It is the circle map. So this one is really interesting because mapping interfaces between applications I know can be a really recurring problem for customers I talk to, and this is one of the better ways I think that you can imagine sort of getting on one page all of the interconnectivity between your different applications. So all we're doing here is we're seeing all of our applications in a circle, and we are seeing the provider and consumer and bidirectional interfaces between them. In this, it seems like it's very few bidirectionals, if any, but you get the idea. And then we can expand on this, and I'll show us specific information about all those interfaces. Again, all the filtering abilities that you would expect are there. You can also overlay initiatives, and it'll show you the breaking and replacing of connections as well. But where I want to jump to from here, which is really, really great, is into the diagramming tool. So if I just expand on this specific integration set or interface set in the data flow diagram, we will see it in essentially what's that kind of reskinned version of draw.io. So a lot of enterprise architects, solution architects might be quite familiar with this layout. But what we're doing is allowing people to sort of meet people where they're at in terms of how they like to visualize their architecture. I will say with LeanIX, the reason I show you the diagramming tool last is because really the best usage of LeanIX is to move towards keeping information in the inventory and then displaying the information you want through the functionality of the reporting. I think it's really trying to convince organizations to move from these static diagrams in Visio or Draw.io or whatever else, to move from those static diagrams to a dynamic reporting way of doing things. That said, oftentimes there are specific things that is helpful to demonstrate in reports. And oftentimes in practice, I think when you're trying to implement a tool like this, a lot of people want to gradually experience that change and still feel they need a diagramming tool from day one because they don't want to kind of be left without the tools that they need. So this is a really great way to meet people in the middle. What you can do in this data flow diagram, which is a kind of subtype of diagram, is we can see information overlaid like that. We have file CSV transfer between this SAP FI and FMS. We can maybe also overlay the data objects. So contract data is moving between all of these. So you can play around with what's visualized. We can also click these little buttons and just continue to expand on the interfaces to just draw out the complexity of the interconnectivity of what we're dealing with here. And that's getting a little bit busy, but you can imagine. And then what we can do as well is, because this is based in LeanIX and refers back to the inventory, as well as pulling in these additional interfaces, we can do things like we did on those reports. So we can overlay the functional fit. So as you can see, we can really start drawing on data from what's within our fact sheet or what's within our inventory. But what I can quickly show you as well as that type of diagramming, we also have, let's pull up this example. We also have a free draw tool, which is quite similar in practice, but allows a little bit more functionality. So what you can do in the free draw tool is, you can see we've messed around here and created various things, but we can really get kind of crazy with what we're doing. So I can pull in just a random box, just whatever, it's a box. I can right click on that. I can create a new fact sheet. So let's call that application 1. Cool. I can also, we can see this already overlaid with the business criticality. So let's just put them back to what they were. So this is going to be a application. We can then maybe add in Square. Let's link this to something that's in our inventory. So let's pull something that actually exists. So let's put that to this Accenture thing. And then we can, oops, we can connect the two of those, and we can create a new relation. Boom. So what we're doing then is we are creating new things on the fly, working out what we're doing. We can also continue to expand on things that show what this relates to. So boom, that just pops open. It shows me that SAP FI is using this IT component. We can play around with this in loads of different ways, show me what organizations are in SAP FI. And rather than having to refer back to something to build out these things or to create a diagram that isn't really making sense in the scheme of our enterprise architecture reality, we can get creative, make new things, show specifically what we want to show in whatever way we want to show it, but have that based in the reality of our organization. Another cool thing we can do is, we have all these different types of visualizations we can use. So we have, say, Archimate notation, we have BPM notation, all sorts of random boxes and things like that. We also have anything you could look for. I mean, C4, iOS, AWS sort of logos and things like that. So really just an endless amount of kind of visuals that you can use to build the sort of diagrams you want to use. And then when we're done, we can click the updates and we can see all of the things that we've created. So this new application I've created, the new linkage between that and this Accenture thing, all of those are recorded here. And then if we have the necessary permissions, we can actually apply those changes and push them into the fact sheet. So if you are, an enterprise architect and you're really trying to build out these relationships, maybe even just setting up some of the relationships initially, and this is the way you want to work, this is a great way to do it. So that's the bulk of what I wanted to show you there. The very last thing I'll show you, which follows on from everything else we've talked about, are these dashboards. So if I open up an example, you can customize these, we can edit, we can pull in various sort of tiles that we want, as you can imagine. And then we can publish these and have them available to specific users. So you can imagine these could be used for specific user groups. It could be relevant to specific projects. But whatever usage you want to do, you can add in different types of reports, add in text, add in kind of metadata about LeanIX. But as you can see, we get these snapshots of various reports frozen in a certain type of way. So this is the application portfolio management or application landscape report we looked at before, specifically showing the time classification. We have a rolled up version here showing us mission critical apps or functional fit. This is another cool type of report we haven't looked at before, but showing us kind of essentially your time classification again with your technical fit and your functional fit on the side. All of these are kind of interactive to an extent, and then you can just expand on them and open them up in another page. We have ongoing initiatives shown here, and we can sort of play around a little bit with those, see different milestones and everything else. To show another more kind of granular sort of example of a dashboard we can do. Here's another one where we're talking about specifically about initiatives. We have initiatives ranked in terms of their benefit within the groupings of our organizational goals, which is a totally different sort of type of report that we can also demonstrate using that same landscape view that we showed before. Ranking business priorities, you get the idea. We can also, assign value to specific projects, assign cost to specific IT components, and then really pull in interesting reporting on costing there as well. The other thing you can do in terms of kind of the governance, and governance, like with any software, is a key part of this, and again, a key place where Kapish really supports. And we can do things like, let's open this up, and pulling KPIs of how things are being used. So how much have we identified as savings in our time assessment, or how many applications do we not have sufficient information available on? We could even have information around the, do I have something here? The data quality, so the overall completion of our applications, how well we are managing our LeanIX workspace and how well we're making sure the information is up to date. You can see in our demo environment, it's not great there. But as you can see, look, you can really pull out all the information in really interesting visuals. And ultimately, I think that's what a good enterprise architecture tool will do, is give you a place where you have confidence that the information is all being kept in that one place, that people have visibility of that, that there's no kind of restrictions for people getting access, and importantly, that the visuals are actually nice to look at, because as simplistic as that can sound, we probably all realize that if something is too complex or too just dull or boring to look at, it's really not going to get the eyeballs it deserves and the attention that it deserves. And I think Lenax does a great job of just being easy to use and providing really, really cool, colorful visuals that make sense kind of intuitively to people. So that's going to conclude my demonstration. If you do want to chat about this some more, please do reach out to Kapish. We are the leading experts of this tool of LeanIX enterprise architecture. We've been doing it for years and years in Australia and New Zealand, and we have a whole load of customers I think who can vouch for the positive results that they've had. We offer onboarding support. We offer continuous, what we call premium support. We have a number of expansions to LeanIX that we've built out through our own development team, additional reporting types and additional sort of calculations and smart tech working in the background. So we really understand this stuff, and we'd love to chat to you about it if this is relevant to your business. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you again.